Well, Dallas Carter, we were talking on the phone. I was on the phone sitting outside the post office when he called. You guys are on way different time zones than us here in Texas. And he was like, why is it the lay people? Why is it us? He and I don't want to be the weather vane, always getting struck by lightning, trying to do all these things in the church. And I said, well, Dallas, it's not right. It shouldn't be like this, but read the Bible. When all the generals and all the priests would do nothing and they were afraid, a young woman, not that young, but a woman, Judith, crossed over into battle to enemy territory, crossed the battle lines, and she killed Holofernes. She cut the guy's head off, right? And you see this over and over in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, often, not always, because you have other examples like Phineas. The priests, the leaders, the kings are fiddling away somewhere, and God chooses an Esther or a Daniel or a Judith or a Paul, and they come and do the most miraculous things. And I was like, we don't need to think of ourselves as a Judith or a Paul, whatever, but we also need to realize that in the economy of God's grace, it's not always the high priest and the bishop and the priest and the Levite and the deacon who is doing all the good work. I mean, that's the story of the Good Samaritan, where Christ says there's a guy in the pit on the side of the road in the ditch, and the priest passes him and the Levite passes him, and it was the Samaritan that helped. And so, surprise, surprised, it's still the same, 2020.
Yeah, and it's always amazing to see who steps up and who doesn't.
Exactly.
You're always a little shocked. And I'll tell you I just want to say this about Dallas. He lives with his wife and all his kids and his mom and dad. That's very Hawaii style, right? We live multi-generational families. Their business has been utterly obliterated. Utterly obliterated. He could be sitting there scrounging for himself, fighting for himself. And his business, he said, Jason, if they opened up tomorrow and things went exactly the way they were before, it would take me 2 years to get back to where I was. And by the way, we're not opening up tomorrow, and it'll be months, if not years, before our economy is back to where it was. Dallas isn't licking his own wounds. What I always say is, you know how men heal? We don't, not licking our wounds, but bearing our claws. Right? Like if you're sitting around like, oh, me, I see all these men on my Facebook page with their little comments, and they're like, you're so pathetic. Yeah. Be a man, fight. Look, my nonprofit has been obliterated. My model was 80% of my income came from speaking and from marketing and consulting films. We have no films now, all canceled for this year. All my speeches through September are canceled. Right. We just lost 80% of our income. And so I'm not licking my wounds. Like, let's bear our claws. I'm not feeling sorry for myself because everyone's suffering. So why am I going to sit here and feel sorry for myself? And there are people suffering a lot. Nick Vujicic, I think I said this last time I was on your show. I was in a tent revival with Nick. You know Nick Vujicic? No Arms, No Legs. Nick. He was in a movie with Eduardo called Butterfly Circus. You've got to Google this guy. Okay. He has no arms, no legs, attempted suicide when he was a boy in his bathtub.
Wow.
And he imagined his mother finding his corpse in the bathtub, and he couldn't, in her horror. So he fought himself up and he got up. And Nick said, well, I was in a tent revival in Mexicali, Mexico, like 90 degrees under a big tent. And it was me, Eduardo, Nick Vujicic, and others. And picture a big tent revival. It was amazing. And Catholic tent revival, but Nick he's not Catholic. And Nick said, I said to God, he's Aussie. This is my horrible Australian accent. I said to God, why isn't anyone giving me a hand up? It's horrible, isn't it? Is that Scottish all of a sudden? It's like,
just go with it, man. Just go with it.
Why isn't anyone giving me a hand up? He's like, God said, if no one's giving you a hand up, it's because I need you to look down and help somebody up. Give them a hand up. He's like, God, I don't have hands. And I said, that's right. When you're like, why is no one helping me? That's because you need to help somebody. In your struggle, in your misery, in your depression, in your substance abuse, in your porn addiction, and all of your things, that's empathy. Now help somebody.
Yeah.
And that's Dallas. Man, I love that guy. He's telling me stories every day about elderly who haven't had food in days till they show up. middle class and upper class people, but afraid to leave their house, no relatives, nothing. And they're so scared from watching the media that if they go out of their house, they're going to drop dead of COVID. They're starving in Hawaii today. They've done thousands of, I think 5,000, I don't want to shortchange them, 5,000 2-week supplies of food they've already delivered.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. And I mean, that's Catholic. That's Christian. I think we rightly should be concerned about lack of sacraments and all that. But we also, in a time of crisis, we have to be the ones that carry the burden financially and with our time and our resources and all that.
Yeah. What a privilege.
Yeah.
You know, what a privilege. Before I was Catholic and I was at adoration with a friend and I wasn't Catholic. I remember having this thought, if Jesus is real, I was like talking to God. I said, if you're real, I don't want to be with you when you're coming, you know, and you're giving your sermons. I don't want to come with you when your people are walking into Jerusalem. I said, if you're real, can I always be with you at the cross? I didn't even know how Christian that was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what it is. Like how, and I have always think like, okay, I don't want to be, people say, oh, do you like this stuff? You like being handcuffed in the back? No, I do. What? I like reading, playing Uno with my kids, doing
Uno,
Muay Thai.
we like Uno too, yeah.
I like making protein shakes and sitting in my yard, you know, looking at my bougainvilleas. I like peace.
Yeah.
I'm actually an introvert. I like being alone. But it's not about what we like.
Yeah.
You know, it's what we're called to do. But I am addled. I am addled at the thought of people suffering. It literally, I feel it. It addles me. It's a grace that God has given me. And so I can't, when I'm having my Lani Kai juice, you know, on my way to Muay Thai, you know, but I'm thinking about the Uyghur. I'm addled by it. And that's when I know you love jujitsu. I tell people the only time I'm not obsessed with my apostolate is when a 26-year-old kid who weighs 240 pounds is trying to punch me in the face. Yeah. You know, Muay Thai for me is like a relief. It's like when I can set my apostolate down because I have to focus and be very serious or I'll get hurt.
Yeah.
So the only way I can explain Muay Thai for me is it's like, you know, if you're carrying a heavy load and you set it down and you're like, ah. That's how I feel when I got these kids trying to hit me. I'm like, ah. Yeah. And no, I don't like it. But when we're in solidarity with the vulnerable, they cease to be vulnerable. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.